about some of the little introductions I've made for various shows, and I think some of you who are listening to this will have heard some of them, but you probably won't have heard all of them. So someone actually asked me if I could stick them all in the same place, so I'm going to put a few of these through this episode. I hope they're quite funny, so here's one that I did just for the very first episode, so we'll see how you go this. You probably won't have heard this one before, and if you have, your take on it might change given recent events.
No.
So my argument to the Treasury is that a pound spent in Croydon is far more value to the country from strict utilitarian calculus than a pound spent in Strathclyde.
The opposition were trying all sorts of scares about privatisation, safety on railway, services being cut, all of which have shown to be utterly and comprehensively wrong.
Thanks to everyone for everything you've done, but now it's time to go.
No.
You know it's hard, we've had some fun, but now the moment's come, it's time to go.
No.
Who could ask for more?
That Iraq has chemical and biological weapons, that Saddam has continued to produce them, that he has existing and active military plans for the use of chemical and biological weapons, which could be activated within 45 minutes, including against his own Shia population.
We have to find greater savings in the welfare bill.
Who could ask for more?
We've got Nuri. Who would want us? Clonishing Rut Uranish. We'll hear something new now.
Now, the next thing I'd like to put into this episode is a speech by Christina McKelvie that she did at the SNP conference. Not the one just there, the previous one. And I thought it was just marvellous, and I've been looking for some way to shoehorn this into any episode that we've ever done. So with no shame, I'm putting it in here because I thought it was marvellous.
Conference, what kind of Scotland do we want to live in? Is it an egalitarian Scotland? A friend to our neighbours? A sister in the family of nations? A contributor to a peaceful world? A nuclear-free nation in a nuclear-free world? A nation defined by its principles and its ethics? A nation defined by its internationalist approach? A nation ready to work within an ethical, peaceful foreign policy? And let's not forget, defence policy does not sit alone, it sits with our foreign policy. I want all of these things. I believe you want all of these things too. Conference, if you go onto Google and put in the words NATO civilian casualties, in 51 seconds you will come up with just under 4 million hits. The most recent, only a few hours old, is another apology for civilian casualties in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Our party's long-standing opposition to NATO is a foundation principle of the SNP. If we start to strip away those principles, what are we left with? Being part of NATO, being no doubt, turns a blind eye to nuclear weapons of mass destruction and death, even if they're not in our own backyard. Being part of NATO means turning a blind eye to children bombed and maimed in Pakistan by unmanned drones. And let's not forget, that unmanned does not relieve anyone's conscience. Being part of NATO means that the so-called democracy in Afghanistan means turning a blind eye to women's rights, made lawfully subservient to men, where women's rights to health, education and work are banned under the so-called democracy brought about by NATO. Now, I stand here proudly as only the third woman in this debate to speak today out of 12 men. No, conference, I don't believe you want to be a party to any of that. I don't believe Scotland wants to turn a blind eye. We have never done so and we never should. Remember, an eye for an eye makes the world blind. I believe, conference, from the bottom of my soul that Scotland can trail a blaze of equality and peace as an independent nation. I do not want to be a paler shade of the UK. Conference, I believe that we cannot have any of those principles and ethics from within NATO. Support Amendment A, support Amendment C, and let our people decide.
Sorry for the abrupt end on the applause there, but it was to stop you having to listen to Tannadice Lad, who felt the need to do a voiceover, but the applause went on quite long for that. However, at the moment we have to interrupt this broadcast because the International Committee on Furiously Backtracking has recently announced that Ken Clarke's recent attempt at it must be considered as one of the smoothest in history.
But if this is money that has to be paid back, isn't John Swinney, the Scottish Finance Secretary, right to describe it as a con trick, a deceit?
It's called a loan. He's probably taken out one or two in his time. It's not a particularly elaborate device. It's not some obscure derivative. He's just trying to be awkward because it's English money for a good cause, and he doesn't like to accept that it's English money that's been given for a very valuable purpose in Scotland. My advice to the Scottish ministers is go ahead and spend it. You can get the same benefits from it that the English will.
English money?
No, it's British money. We have the same. We're totally integrated economies. We have the same problems.
Like a subsidy.
It's not like a subsidy. We're an integrated economy. We're in the same global crisis, which the United Kingdom has to tackle north and south of the border. It's an illusion to think you can draw a line between the two nations and that somehow the economic problems are different on either side. We're very, very closely integrated.
I don't know what you made of that. I suppose it was quite smooth, but it's put me in mind of another little introduction I did. This time I did it with the assistance of Jon Stewart from The Daily Show.
Now, he and I agree this country does face some problems. We do have some issues. What we disagree on is the scope of these issues and the cause of these issues and the timing of these issues. I believe we have very complex problems in this country, like we have had in this country since its inception. What is wrong with this country is not that we face problems that we have not faced before. We face a deficiency in our problem-solving mechanism. And the reason we face a difficulty in our problem-solving mechanism is that a good portion of this country has created an alternate universe.
But I can say this. Britain is on the right track.
I call this alternate reality. I call this place where these folks live Bullshit Mountain.
I understand that. I mean, I understand that Newsnight Scotland's position is that the power should be given to the Scottish Parliament and the SNP should do as they wish. We understand that.
The denizens of Bullshit Mountain believe many things.
That we retain the capability to build submarine nuclear power plants in the UK. Good news for the country as a whole.
Oh, Bullshit Mountain is a dangerous place. I have come here tonight to plead to the mayor of Bullshit Mountain.
Joanne Lamont.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer.
Talk to your people. On Bullshit Mountain, our problems are amplified and our solutions simplified, and that's why they won't work.
My vision of one nation, my vision of Britain.
That is not a solution. And I believe tonight we will take you down from the mountain. And you can come live amongst the people once again. Thank you.
I'm not always a fan of Jon Stewart, but he has his moments, you have to admit. And he suggested they're living amongst the people once again, and I think Kevin Williamson, also at the Radical Independence Conference, had a more than decent suggestion about how democracy could actually be with the people again and not with the politicians.
Because after all, wealth is created collectively in any society, no matter what anybody says. So this is what we're looking at. Very simple ideas, but very radical ideas. How they pan out into specific areas of policy is something that this organisation has begun a fantastic debate, engaging people and looking at different aspects of policies. I mean, some of the things, I don't think we can look ahead without fair and progressive taxation being at the very, very top of the agenda. It's not being discussed by any of the political parties. None of them are talking about fair and progressive taxation. But this is very important. Land reform, including land taxation, this is something we need to discuss. There's a new sort of phrase entered the political lexicography jargon. It's called shovel-ready projects, and I think there's nothing more shovel-ready than building social housing so that everybody's house has security of tenure. Also the question of re-examining the role of the banks. I think this is very important. We're building a new country and we've seen what can happen if we get it wrong with the banking system from the country we're trying to get out of, the state we're trying to get out of, and we need to look at breaking up the banks, the ideas of nationalising the banks or creating small localised banks. It's quite interesting in Germany. Small localised banks are what sustains local economies. Germany is always portrayed as the great Eurocentralist banking system. So those are some of the ideas. But what I would like to ask a question at this conference, and it's a question I think that it needs to be asked from now till 2014 and beyond, is do we have the democratic infrastructure to facilitate radical change? We all know that lasting radical change only comes from the grassroots up. That's something I'd like to have a wee examination of here, we talk about here. The secondary question, which this is very pressing, I've not even heard it raised really in any seriousness yet, is do we have the democratic infrastructure to create a new nation state? Because we're not just electing a government in 2014 or even in 2016, we're creating a brand new state, a state for all of our citizens, an inclusive state. And that means there's practical hot potatoes need to be considered. We've seen discussed the question of the currency that we have in this new state, whether it's the pound sterling, whether it's a euro, or we have a Scottish pound. It's a question of the head of state. Do we keep the monarchy, or do we have an elected head of state, or do we have no head of state? There's the question of which international organisations Scotland affiliates to. For example, NATO. I'd imagine most people here are pretty hostile to the idea of joining NATO. I am. There's also the question of joining the European Union. Who decides these? Basically what I'm asking is, who decides these? Is it the Scottish Government that's elected in 2016? Or do the people decide? Are we democratically consulted through a referendum? Now, if you think about this, there's secondary questions come out of this. For example, what about we're creating a new nation state. What about a constitution? What about our actual citizens' rights being enshrined in a constitution? How's this done? Is this done by electing a government in 2016? Or are the people consulted collectively and voting it again? And all of a sudden you start seeing, to build a new nation state and to consult with the people, it's going to need regular consultation, and it's going to mean a series of democratic referendum. And I believe that we don't have the democratic infrastructure to carry this out. Even this referendum that we're going to be having next year, it was costed at some 13.3 million. 8.8 million of that's going to be spent on actually the physical carrying out of the referendum. I think it's money well spent. I think everybody else would agree with this. But it also means massive planning in advance, where you have to book primary schools, community centres, town halls. You have to get an army of staff and volunteers and all the boxes, and then you have to fly them all in. This is not a This is a Victorian institute. This is a Victorian form of democracy where you put a cross in the box and it gets trudged down to a community centre and it gets sent back, and you wait for almost 24 hours before you get a result. The Electoral Commission, after the cock-up in Sheffield in 2010, they specifically said, I've got a quote here, it basically said that it's not fit for purpose. The type of democracy that we're inheriting from Britain, from the British state, it's not fit for purpose, and it's definitely not fit for creating a new democratic state. I don't believe it can be done unless we've got electronic voting, where every person over the age of 16 is able to vote in their home, through the internet, through their mobile phones, through interactive TV, or through an electron machine.